Hello all and welcome back to Press Any Button to Continue. Today we're going to be taking you back in a time machine, and if I can believe I'm saying this, to a time where you could physically go into video game shops and buy video games. Like, that is crazy even sentence to say. As time has been moving on, game shops have been closing down. Places that used to sell them are not doing it anymore. And so we want to take a deep dive into our childhood past and nostalgia of all our favourite video game shops growing up and all our experiences that we had with them. My name's Keith and this is my co-host Nisha. Welcome to Brick and Mortar Store Video Game Diddlies.
Man, I think this is going to be really interesting, and it was inspired totally by you sending me a picture of the fact that the shop Game is after reopening in Ireland, and it blew my fucking mind, man. I was genuinely shocked because Game has been gone from Ireland since the would it be early 2000s roughly?
Yeah, like I think I like the.
Something
I mean, we
like
had
that?
recently did an episode on midnight launches, and like I think going back to that, like the DS came out in like 2006. Like I'd say maybe I think I got a 3DS in Game. I think that was probably like the last thing that was out. So I'm guessing like well over 10 years ago, easy 12 years ago, which had that like iconic purple like store look to it. You know what I mean? Like Game for me was the shop. Like GameStop used to be called Game Station in Ireland. I remember.
It? Yeah. Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
Oh, pretty
and
good.
that to me was always like the shit version, you know. So
Yeah,
I was
actually,
like, Game for me was the quality, pristine one.
Yeah. Come to think of it, I remember like my earlier memories of game shops are in Game, and it was out in town or in Dublin city centre. And I remember because I've told the story about one time where my dad brought me into Game and was like, pick out a game for your cousin as a Christmas present, and I was a moany little fucker and I was like, oh, just get him a football game because he likes football. And he was like, no, what would you get? Because he was secretly trying to get me a Christmas present. And I ended up picking R-Type DX, I think it was, on the Game Boy Color. But I can remember, I have like memories of that time being in Game and just looking around, and it was just wall-to-wall Game Boy Color. Game Boy and Game Boy Color everywhere, man. And it was just it's a really nice memory to have. And I have very specific memories of, there's an area near me called Dunleary, and there's a shopping centre in Dunleary, and there was two really cool shops in there. One of them was called Wow Comics, and that's where I used to go to buy all my Pokemon cards. And I still have some of my original Pokemon, you know, the manga, is that what it's called when they're the magazines? I bought some of them in, and I still have my Wow Comics bag, like the white paper bag that it came in.
I love it.
But I can remember buying booster packs and original packs of Pokemon cards in that shop, and I have a lot of nostalgia. I was actually looking up the shop the other day in preparation for this episode, and or last night, and I was trying to find out some. It's very, very scarce trying to get information on it. I'd love to find out more. But then there was another shop in that shopping centre, and it was up on the top floor, and I can remember all the big box PC games. I can remember all the Super Nintendo games. Yeah,
it's such a wonderland, like, as in, because like in the day as well, particularly, there was so much more like decorations. Do you know what I mean? There was so much more like hype around it. Now, just to preface as well, because we said Game is coming back to Ireland, it's kind of coming back. So it's a part. So it's a part of Sports Direct, which I guess are like an English company, I guess, that used to own Game, or maybe were some subsidiary of it. So the reason this came to be, because I think the story is worth enough telling of how I even discovered that this was happening, was the fact that me and my friend John, we play Dragon Ball cards. So we play Dragon Ball Super cards. And they're really hard to like get locally. Like in Ireland and Cork, there was no shops that did them until recently. A beautiful card shop in town called Sandbox is selling them now. But at the time, John was trying to get a hat. So he went into Sports Direct, a shop I would never think of entering, as my body was never made for sports. And he was just trying to get a hat. And we like have been searching for decks forever. We've been asking that shop in town to get boosters, and they finally did. But like we really had to like order everything online. And I thought I was having a fever dream. He took a picture of Dragon Ball decks for €6. They were half price. They're selling them for nothing, and they're Pokemon cards half off, binders, the whole lot. And he sent me a picture of a Dragon Ball deck, and I was like, "You're lying to me! Like, this is the weirdest thing ever." He's like, "No, there's this whole place in a sports shop that's selling Xbox Switch Dragon Ball cards,
crazy.
Pokemon cards. They even have like a Capcom system that has 100 Capcom games on it. They have arcade little mini cabinets. They have all these like crazy cool things, and we were like, what is going on? And it was when he checked out that I guess Game are somehow still linked with them. And is Game still open in England, I guess, possibly?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's still open. Yeah.
So it's come back in a little bit through that way. So they have their own mini section in it. And then I went to the one out in Blackpool, a different place, and I had the Game logo and the sticker on it that I sent you.
Yeah.
And they had some like specific Game merchandise stuff. So I don't know what the future of it's going to hold, but we've lost so much recently in Ireland. Like GameStop is gone.
Yes.
A lot of those shops like Curry's that used to stock video games have so much less and less and less, you know?
Yeah, they do.
Like
yeah,
Tesco used to stock all games. Now it's like 1 or 2 games from like PS4 just randomly sitting on a shelf, you know?
Yeah.
So that is how it's back in a little way.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like, I got really excited. When you sent me that photograph, I was like, this is something really cool. This is a turnaround, and it was totally unexpected. I had not expected that. With GameStop closing down, I thought that was such a shame because it was the last big shop that was all around the country that was selling video games. I know towards the end they kind of split into half merch and half video games, but they were still there, and there was shops around, because obviously there is still Smiths that you can go to buy video games, and then there's a few what we call independent or mom and pop shops that are around. In Dublin, there's very few. There's the Game Book Exchange, which just sells like kind of secondhand retro video games, and then there's the Rage, and then down in Wexford now there is the Retro Gaming Store in Wexford, which they're expanding hugely at the moment actually. So I was talking to Anthony, who owns that shop, and he was saying that they're moving next door, so they're after getting the building next door, and it's 3 floors.
Nice.
So their current shop was not tiny, but it was just like a standard, I don't know what, like just a regular shop, size wise. And now they're moving next door, and he was saying he's thinking about putting trying to set up like a little museum and stuff like that, and maybe having some arcades and stuff, which I think would be really cool. And I'm actually gonna have a look, because if he does end up, and I said this to him at the last Irish Gamer Market, if he does end up opening up a museum, I'm gonna see if I have anything rare that'd be cool to
it'd
donate.
be nice to contribute to it.
100%, man. Yeah, absolutely, because I think it'd be really cool. But I think it's cool to see what the Retro Gaming Store in Wexford are doing. They're growing. They're taking advantage of, say, the likes of GameStop not being around anymore. Now they're down in Wexford, you know what I mean? It's a bit it's not as big as Dublin, say, so they might have a bit more of a footfall going their way, and I just think it's really cool I think it's really cool what they're doing, and it's really great to see. And then the fact that Game are coming in as well, I think is really cool to see. It's mad, like I can even feel this sounds a bit stupid, but like I can feel myself being real perky talking about this more so than usual, because I'm like it's very exciting for me, man. It's really exciting.
It is. It's a weird one, because it's such like there's such like a juxtaposition of timing in the sense that, like, you know, the way we think about when we talk about Game, and I think about going into that shop, and what I remember the starting death of GameStop too, right? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I remember being in Game as a kid, and like the thing I loved is behind the counter they had the glass cabinets with everyone's pre-bookings that you could see. So all the special editions of all the games were behind the counter, and I used to like that was like so exciting for me. And you could see what spare special editions they had. Like I loved that stuff, and you know, they had all their PlayStation games, and I think they had a thing like where like if you found the game cheaper anywhere else, they had like a sticker on it that would match the price for a while. Because I remember I got Dragon Ball Final Bout on the PS1 in Game, which is a terrible game. And I remember they like matched a price that was in like Virgin Megastores was another one. Would have been a huge game place that would have sold them.
Yes.
But like, and just all, as I said, the decorations they had, everything in between, and it was all video games. Do you know?
Yeah.
That's the way I could describe it. And the thing I noticed about GameStop at a time was when 2/3 of the video games were taken off the shelves, and it was replaced with pop figures and toys and all. Like, I vividly remember, that happening. And there was like the secondhand market there was kind of gone, and it was just like there was a few display boxes, and the rest was like toys. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was scaled back hugely. Physical video games were.
So the question then I have is, like, Game now potentially like coming back in an indirect way in Sports Direct. They're going to be selling modern games, but they're also selling some cool stuff like cards and stuff that I'm into, which I really like. You know, they kind of have a nice like mix, right? But
Yes.
we're never ever going to have, like, no matter how much game stores come back, the things that are obviously new games are keep going to go more and more digital. So is the only way we can have like the brick and mortar game stores now is in a retro sense? Like, is it possible to have a new video game store open? Like, is that a terrible business idea? Do you know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, like I think it's a great idea. If I had the, well, I am not a businessman. I don't have any. Well, actually, I have very, very small experience running my own business as a tradesperson, but never anything that bought and sold products. So I don't have any experience with that. But I think when you are the only one, you know, in your area, then why not? Like, and also, this is something I love to do. I remember joking with my little brother Luke, who's a tattoo artist, that we're going to open up a shop that's half retro video games, half a tattoo studio.
Yeah.
And how cool would that be? Like, but and because it's something I would love to do it if I had the means and capabilities to do so. But I definitely think it's a good idea, man. I really, really do, because there's everything has been scaled back, and nostalgia is a very powerful thing. And it's very clear to see from all of the recent successes with NES Minis, SNES Minis, remake after remake after remake after remake after remake. Yeah, and people want that. From what I can see, people want the physicality of going into a shop, because everyone can go on to Amazon and just press a button and it's there.
They do. But I guess the question I'm asking is like, is it physically possible to open a new video game store that sells new games?
Oh, no. That, yeah, you'd have to, in my opinion anyway, you'd have
combine
to
the two.
split, 100%, because aren't most modern video game companies, they're going to just reduce it, their physical copies, as much as they can, because they can just release the digitals. And
like the latest real Switch, I think it was like Alan Wake was released as digital only. Now there's a physical edition now, and I knew they would do that. You know, it's a great way to get double the sales. And now Dead Rising has a remake coming out, which I'm very excited for. They're doing a whole thing, and that's like saying digital only sales as well. Which makes me think then that the only possible way of doing it is, you know, get in the new physical copies that are available, get in all the special editions that are available, because I think we'll even enter a stage that even if discs and physical media disappear, the special editions will still exist. Do you know what I mean? Because people will want it to be attached with their, you know, digital copy or whatever. Yes. But I do think selling, like, I would love, right, this would be my, like, reach out to retro video game stores, and I don't know how feasible this is. It's just like a hypothetical thing. So for the brick and mortar stores that exist today, that are bringing that nostalgia trip, that are giving that extra vision experience but buying, is like, it would be awesome too if they sold, like, you know, some of the new games as well. So like when you're going in and you're looking at it, you're like, oh, I meant to pick up the new Dragon Ball game that's coming out in October. Do you stock the special edition of that? I'd love to buy that. And then I'd love to buy Banjo-Kazooie. And, you know, I think that's the way it would survive, right? It's like, rely on obviously retro, because that's huge and that's where all the physical is. So you need something in a store to sell. But it would be great as well to be like, oh, I could pick up a copy of the new game. Like, I think that's a great way to bring people into your shop, even, you know, to get something old with something new.
100%. I wonder so obviously the likes of Smiths, say, right, they have a relationship with whatever company that they're buying Xbox, PS5, Switch off, right? I wonder how would a smaller shop, like an independent store, how would they get that relationship? Is there a way that they can buy their stuff from, like, suppliers, or would they have to, like, literally go onto Amazon and buy stock and then sell it at a higher price? I wonder how.
I don't know, because here's the question, right? Like, a huge reason that, like, I never went into GameStop is because Smiths always sold their games for €10 cheaper. So I don't know they were always €10 cheaper, like, without fail, and really? In some cases even more, always. Oh, yeah. So like, GameStop was selling it for the recommended retail price, and Smiths were always able to do it cheaper. Now, obviously Smiths are a big chain, but I would have thought GameStop for a while would have been a big chain too.
Oh, they
like
were.
Smiths can afford to sell their old stock off for like a $5. Like, it's crazy. Like, I don't know what goes on with, like, how relationships work, and, you know, how you, as you said, how do you get into business with Xbox and Sony and Nintendo, what you can sell it for. Like, Smiths were able to sell the games cheaper than they were digitally on the store on PlayStation and Xbox. They were €10 cheaper for a physical copy. Like, and that is still primarily the way it is a lot of the time today. So I think that was a big reason as well why GameStop couldn't compete with that with whatever relationship was going on, you know, because like a big thing about talking about these stores is like, how do they die? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then also with CX coming in, obviously would have played a hand in it.
Yeah, that's
as well.
huge.
And it's just healthy, as you said. Competition's always a good thing. Like it is a shame. I was saddened to see GameStop go, because anything to do with video games, it is a shame to see them go. But it's also I'm also quite happy to see independent shops kind of coming up as well, and to see I support any and all video game shops, you know what I mean? I don't want to see anyone have to close, but it's also great to see new ones crop up as well, if you get what I mean. It's mad. I'm finding myself being real scatterbrained trying to talk about this, because I'm trying to funnel a million ideas into one train of thought. But I suppose, right, to bring it back for you, what are some of your earlier memories of video game shops? What were the early shops you remember going, early games you remember buying? Do you have them?
So yeah, my early gaming memory stores, like there was a few, like some of them, the stores still exist, but the gaming parts are gone, which I think is interesting. So like Golden Discs was the one I used to always look in all the time.
That's one of my early ones as well. Yeah.
So like they had a proper game section. Like there used to be a stage that, you know, the way in Golden Disc now, they're like alive via the vinyls, right? They have like a whole floor dedicated to vinyls, and that came back in a big way, which is a very interesting conversation actually.
It is.
Those floors used to just be video games. So like that whole vinyl floor sections used to be video games. And that's where I have that really early memory of me getting my Pokemon Stadium N64 was upstairs in Golden Disc, and I remember being in the back, which was so cool. The classic what-like story of Virgin Megastores, where Richard went in with his bag and it was on that slanted DVD metal stand, and his bag caught it, pulled it back and flung it like a boomerang, all the DVDs across the shop. Brilliant. And that poor man working there was like, fuck my existence. He's like, what? Like there was them, like there was... I mean, I feel like everywhere sold games, like all the toy shops. Smith's having the gaming zone was a big one for me. That card I gave you, right? So the gaming section of that was called like the gaming zone. That was its own unique place where I got my GameCube and my Nintendo 64, or my sister's Nintendo 64. Like she got that in there, which is like, and my first PlayStation, which was my first console that I had the pennies for, I got in the gaming zone, you know? Yeah. And like Toy Master used to have them, like... Oh God, I'm trying to think of other ones there now, but like, and as I said, there used to be Game Station before GameStop, but there was a few. Like, I don't think there was many places you could go. I think as well because video games for a while were considered toys too. You know what I mean? So they used to be part of a lot of toy shops. You know what I mean? Like the hot toy was the Game Boy or whatever. You know?
True.
But what about you? What are kind of your earliest ones?
A lot, definitely a lot was spent in Golden Discs. So I can remember getting Ocarina of Time in Golden Discs. I remember buying Final Fantasy X in Golden Discs. I can remember getting the infamous grey South Park cart that I thought was going to be the orange cart in Golden Discs. That was in Dunleary as well. And again, there was also, there was that shop, there was Golden Discs in Dunleary, but there was also a video game shop across the road. And then there was also Music City across the road in Dunleary, which sold video games as well. So there was a good few around, but I've an awful lot in Golden Discs was one. Then there was out in HMV in Grafton Street in town in Dublin City Centre. There was a huge HMV, and as far as I remember, all downstairs was video games. And I have memories of seeing like special edition N64s up on the shelf, like displays downstairs. And then in game, as I was saying, when my dad brought me in to buy a Game Boy game and I ended up getting R-Type, I can remember specifically used to go out there. But you see, Smith's wasn't around when I was a kid, so the local Smith's for me is in a place called Carrick Mines, and it's a new-ish industrial estate, which is maybe 10-ish years old. So Smith's only came around for me anyway then. So there was a lot of smaller shops. There was a lot of like independent shops around that I would have went to, and then also Extravision and Advanced Vision, which are Ireland's answers to Blockbuster, like video rental shops. A hell of a lot of them were sold.
There was that stage where like Extravision turned into like a shop, I guess, more or less. Like am I right in thinking? First of all, there's two things that come into my head. our HMVs, when they closed down, turned into golden discs in some of them, right? So the main one we had on Patrick Street in Cork was HMV for years, and now that's golden disc. They like took over that spot.
Right.
But am I right in thinking with Extravision, as you said, Ireland's answer to, you know, Blockbusters and Chartbusters and all that shit, did they stopped the renting thing for ages, and you could just go in and buy movies and games, right? Is that your experience of it?
No, I'm
like towards their latter years.
I'm fairly sure they still rented right up until the very end. It just might have been scaled back hugely. I do remember they did broaden what they sold, and they went into, you know, when MP3 players became the latest in technology, and selling DVD players and stuff like that. Like, I do remember they definitely broadened what they were selling, you know. But I'm fairly sure they stayed renting right up until the very end. And then it's funny, did you ever see any of those? So when Extravision totally closed down, they had like a vending machine. Did you ever see them? The Extravision like vending machines that you could still rent from.
Oh, I do. They were like the Netflix ones as well, because there was Netflix vending machines you could rent from too.
Was there? Yeah.
So Netflix was originally just a renting service. You know that,
right? Yeah. But it was postal. Like you'd pay it in a post, wouldn't you? You'd send away and they'd post you.
But
out
they also had machines
movies.
You could like go in and like it was a vending machine that gave you a DVD, and you had to return it within, you know, X amount of time or whatever. Yeah. So I do remember them. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, and they were around for quite a while. I'd love to actually get my hands on one of them. I'd say it'd be very, it's like a piece of history, isn't it, when it comes to physical media. But I'm fairly sure Extravision kept going renting wise until the very end. But they definitely did broaden their horizons. But I think it's going back to my childhood memories, because I do have a lot of memories of the Dunleary area, right, which is kind of close to me. And again, that shop. Wow Comics, because I can remember the day I went in and bought the Japanese booster set that I got that Japanese Charizard in.
Oh, you got that? I didn't know you got that locally. How were they selling the Japanese cards? They
were just selling Japanese
and
boxes.
how much did you pay for it, do you think?
I don't remember how much, but I do remember it was cheaper than your standard cards. And I can also remember them holding competitions down there as well. So that was incredibly nostalgic, that shop. And then you'd walk just a little bit around the corner, and there was, I can't remember the name of the store, but it was a really small store, and it was actually owned by a guy who his son was in the same school as me. And I actually reached out to him a few years ago and asked him if do you have any old photographs of the store, because I'd love to see what it was like, you know, get some photographs, and maybe, like, I think I was into writing blogs at the time, and I wanted to like write a blog about it, but unfortunately never came to fruition. But I can remember going into that shop and all of the big box PC games, which I thought were really, really cool, and seeing Super Nintendo games. And there was an awful lot more like independent stores back then, I suppose, because physical media was just so huge back then, wasn't it? You know?
Like you've inspired me to just very quickly like look up like what stores used to look like. Do you know what I mean? Like the HMV in like 2001 or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm so curious to like remember what those stores look like and where they were with it.
It's mad. Like I've really, throughout the years, I have tried to find information on rental stores and video shops in and around my area in Dublin. And it's very, very difficult to find photographs, which is why I actually reached out to that guy whose dad owned the shop in Dunleary, because it's very difficult to actually find photographs and articles on old stores, because there were, you know, I don't know, like it just doesn't seem to be something that was so very well documented.
Like, I don't know, like, you know, if there was a town that was evacuated and it just had a pristine Extravision or something, and like you could do like a documentary on visiting it, you know what I mean? And
let me tell you, right? So, you know, Ben, Laser Steak. So there is an old video shop in his area that has been closed for years, right? And I won't give any specifics away in case Ben doesn't want to, but there's a video shop in his area, and he has had a conversation with the owner of that shop, and it hasn't been opened in years. and there's still stuff in it. And I have said to him, Ben, please let me be there if they let you go into the shop and have a look around. I don't want anything. I just want to be there. I just want to experience it.
You just want to experience it. I know,
because
man. Fuck.
There definitely is. Like, have you ever seen those? There's really old, not really old. There's YouTubers called the Game Chasers, right? Which were some of the pioneers of retro gaming YouTube channels, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And they have a video of, there's one time that I think they're traveling to a convention and they come across like basically an old town that's just run down. And in it is a shop, and it's an old video rental shop or a video game shop. And he goes in and like it's totally trashed. The door's open and stuff. And there's video games in it, man. Brand new in the box. Like just trash laying there. I'm telling you, man, there definitely is like lockups, storage that has somehow been forgotten. And there's boxes and boxes and boxes. I'm getting way off course here, but there's definitely time capsules out there. Buildings I would
love that. Like if you just hired like a professional cameraman to just follow us around, like, and you went and we could just drive around Ireland and you'd find like any time
like American Pickers, but video games.
Yeah. But like it's more like it's almost like you do it like a horror. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of going in like not even a horror, but like just that like feeling of opening up a dusty door into a place that hasn't been touched. Like it's almost ghostly. Do you know what I mean?
Man, that'd be a good documentary series. Any TV channels, anyone in television that's listening or wants to fund the project, get onto us. We could be the Irish retro game hunters or something like that.
Yeah, like the Irish game ghost hunters. It's just so cool.
It would be very cool. That idea of going back to see those shops is why I've tried to research and find images and pictures and videos of information on old shops, but it's I have found it very difficult to find info on local ones anyway, at least, you know. But I do remember the gradual them disappearing in the kind of not early 2000s, kind of early 2000s. So I remember the shops closing down, and I remember being like, why is this happening? You know, what's going on here? But I didn't realise it was the fact that the internet was becoming a thing, and everyone was moving into the future. And it's why so much retro stuff was discarded back then, because it was never, like, at the point now, right, when a PlayStation 6 comes out, you're not just going to throw away your PlayStation 5. But back then, when the SNES came out, people were just like, right, NES, out the window, see you later, this is the latest and the greatest, and that's yesterday's news, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but the other thing as well that, like, which is going to be the norm, is there's not going to be a disc drive for the PlayStation 6. There won't be a disc drive on the next generation of console.
Do you think, is that a certain? Do you think?
I would bet €100 on it today, right now, if you want. Like, you quote me on it.
No, because you're probably right, to be honest.
Yeah, like, well, the reason I know this to be true is because there's more digital versions of consoles now than there is disc drive ones. So
is there?
So like the way it works now is like there's this Xbox Series X that's all digital. There's a 2 terabyte one that does have a disc drive. There's the Series S, which is all digital. The PlayStation new Slimline is all digital. And now what they've done is they've given you a disc drive one as well, but you can also buy the disc drive separately. So there's no reason for that to happen, because it's like, why don't you just get the digital one, buy it separately? Like, why is there the option of both, but then you can go back and get the other one? And the general reason of it is they're just getting consumers used to the fact that it's not going to come with one anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, like they're implementing into your mind that, like, so in another few years, you're like, sure, that was kind of happening anyway. It's like a gradual process. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's funny, we go back to when the Xbox One originally launched. They were fucking slated and destroyed. Yeah. There was that whole thing about the fact that your games were going to be like, when you put in the disc, the game just installs. Which means you wouldn't be able to share the games or anything. And remember, PlayStation did that video being like, how do you share games with PlayStation 4? And it's a snarky video where he just hands him the game. Yeah,
that was very good. Yeah. That was marketing genius.
Which was incredible. But the only thing Xbox did wrong is they were just too ahead of their time. People weren't ready for it, right? Like, that's what we have now. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, for the most part, like, we're pretty much close to that. Most people are buying their games digitally. than rather than physical. Now, like that is the stats on that, and you can't share digital games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like there's that, but I also think like I'm looking here right at inside of a video game store at the prices of PS1 games, Sega Mega games, PS2 games, and it's depressing. I'm looking inside a brick and mortar store here. So this is when the PlayStation 4 is already out, right? And we are looking here at like immaculate PlayStation games. We're looking at €3, Speed Freaks on the PS1 5, Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Mega is going for 8, Rayman 2 5. Everything's €5, €3 to €5 on every single PS1 game.
What?
And then there's a selection.
That must be like when they're at the end of their time though, because weren't they pricey as all fucking hell back then? Like,
yeah,
no?
I think this is probably just there's a PS4 sign in here, so this has got to be during the height of PS3 and during like the very start, maybe launch of PS4. There's PlayStation 2 stuff. Then like it's funny. There's just this period where game prices change, and it's so interesting, man. Like there's PS2 games here that I know go for £30. They're all like £5.
Fuck.
Do you know what I mean?
Crazy.
And that's in the space of like 10 years, I'd say.
Mm.
There's like that in-between stage where something's not retro, but it's also not new, where it's cost nothing. Like that's like the price of where video games, like the Xbox 360 store, digital store is closing now, right? So you can't, if you connect your Xbox 360, that's going to be gone, right?
Yeah.
So anything you have there needs to be got. Now, it's still cross-compatible with the newer consoles, and you can still play 360 and Xbox games, but only the ones that are backwards compatible. So, like, that store is closing, which is going to shoot the prices of 360 and PS3 now. Like,
I think, yeah.
They're going to hit now. They've always been cheap for the last while. We're at, you know, when I'm looking at this brick and mortar store here, they're selling these games for cheap. That's just before they start skyrocketing. And we're going to hit we're in that phase now where PS3 and 360, the access to the games are disappearing and all that shit's going to skyrocket. Your 360 and PS3 collection in the next 5 years is going to be worth 3-4 times what it's worth now. Easy.
What do you think? Do you think retro video games are going to keep increasing in price? Because they have gone up hugely in the 10 years that I have been collecting retro video games. The price difference is fucking insane. But is that, like, do you think that's going to keep going up, or do you think it's kind of plateaued?
There's like two options, right? Like the reason they're so expensive is because game preservation. Xbox does the best job, PlayStation does a very shitty job, and Nintendo doesn't do a job. Right? And Nintendo force their people to emulate games. Like essentially, like you want to play a game, like, you know, and there's a big, you know, there's a big issue with that. So like, and also now physical media will die completely, which I think will make them more expensive, because all of a sudden it's not just a retro game, it's a relic of a media that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like discs won't exist. So like that might make them more interesting too. Then again, VHSs don't really hold value, so I'm not sure.
But when you said that to me, I was like, but what about VHS? But I think it's because like a retro video game, right, can still be for most people appreciated. Like a 16-bit Super Nintendo game can still looks good today, yeah. But when you objectively look at a VHS, unless you're into it, you know, like I love the sound, the crackle, the graininess. That's my fucking vibe. But if you're not,
but I also have another answer for that though, because like you can get all the movies on DVD, so there's no desire for it. Where you can't get the games anywhere else, the preservation's dead.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, man.
But like that is it, right? Like if I want to play God of War fucking 2 or 1, I have several options, right? I can get it on the PS2, which might be €20 to €30 for both, like for one game. Okay. Yeah. I can do the crappy streamy PS5 version of it, I think, but then I have to pay €150 a year for their extra premium classic edition, which is crazy. Or I get the PS3 collector's edition with God of War 1 and 2, which is $50. So like they're my options. None of them are cheap. None of them are great accessible. The PS3 probably being your best option out of all of them because it's in HD or whatever. Like they're your options, because there's no like unless PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo release all their library on digital, then everything will just plummet. Like if they literally say £50 a year, you can play every single game from every generation on a server. There you go. Then the prices will plummet.
Get into that like Netflix style where it's the only way is like a what's the word called? Like a full subscription model. That's it. Just all subscription model like.
But like it's not even subscription or buying. It's just the fact that like there's people, the prices are there because people are fearful that they'll never get to play their favorite game again and that it won't exist.
Yeah.
So like unless somehow there's like a digital library of like every PS2 game ever made, which there is technically on emulation, I guess, that needs to be put on a service that a console has access to. Like Paper Mario on the GameCube always goes for €150 on CX.
Mm-hmm.
They just released the port of it on the Switch. And you know what's really fucking annoying me? It's such a rant because this is the reason physical game stores die, contributes to this too. It's so apt for the conversation, right?
Right.
Is the fact that they just released Luigi's Mansion 2 HD on the Switch for full price again. That's a 3DS game. Like, and it's like, it's just fucking... And then there was Paper Mario that was just released for a full $60 as well. Like, I'm actually going to look up CX now and see if the price of Paper Mario has dropped. I'm very curious. Has the re-release of a game that you used to only be able to play on GameCube officially, now on Switch, made it drop? Like, it's going to be fucking interesting to see. Do you know what I mean? Paper Mario 1000-Year Door GameCube game. Okay, interestingly, apparently not. It's still 145 quid. Which is surprising. I would have 100% assumed that if it was newly readily available.
I think the reason why it's still up is not from a playing point of view, but from a collector's point of view.
Sure.
Because with retro video games, an awful lot of people just collect and don't play a lot of their games. It's just purely a collection, you know? And there's certain games that I just think are never. Pokemon and Mario games are never, ever, and Zelda games. Stuff like that is just never going to come down. It doesn't matter if they re-released a million versions of Ocarina of Time or whatever it is.
Yeah, someone wants the original version of it.
100%. And do you know what's an interesting... The likes of CEX and stuff, like second-hand shops. 2 points that I want to talk about because I feel like they're interesting. One of them is in early years, do you remember seeing pictures of the World of Nintendo, which was basically Nintendo would set up like what Game is doing in JD Sports. They'd set up an area in a shop and it's just World of Nintendo, and it's just like a Nintendo. It's just a Nintendo shop. And I wonder why didn't PlayStation ever open a PlayStation shop in countries? Like, why didn't Xbox open an Xbox shop? Why didn't, like, I know there's Nintendo of New York, but there was never just the Nintendo shop. Like, surely that would have fucking sold like hotcakes. Like,
yeah, I'm not sure. Like,
why
there was like being
thing?
In Japan, there was 3 dedicated Nintendo stores that were Nintendo stores, you know.
But
yeah, like anywhere else
in our country, I don't think in England, I don't think in most countries there was like. Why wasn't there a PlayStation shop? Why wasn't there an Xbox shop? Like, surely that's should have been.
Because I suppose
there's
like
3 of them.
I guess the only way I could think is from a business point of view, like, unless you're opening up something that kind of acts a little bit as a museum and a tour, like, why would you, I mean, this is just me posing to think about what it might be. Like, why would you spend money on having your own retail and your own staff when you can just, like, license your, like, you know, just give it to someone else? Do you know what I mean?
Is it all just to do with money? I
mean, more than likely, yeah. But I mean, I do think that's interesting that, like, there is definitely a collecting aspect. But, like, here's the thing, right? Why are GameCube games double or triple the price of their Xbox and PlayStation 2 counterparts for multi-platform games? And another thought process, and this, the only thing that comes into my mind, is the fact that they use mini discs, and mini discs are like a dying media. And I'm wondering, is there, obviously Nintendo also just holds like a brand name, right?
Yeah.
That
I just think
is a bit more expensive.
I just think it's a Nintendo thing.
Like, you can go into CX and you can like get Resident Evil 4 or, you know, something. I'm just trying to think of like a multi-platform game, and it's going to be more expensive on the GameCube, which is like interesting, you know? Like, is it just a hold a better name regardless if it plays shitter than an Xbox version even?
Yeah,
you know?
I really do think it's just a Nintendo thing from a collector's point of view. From my experience again in about 10 years of collecting, anything Nintendo has just always been pricier than Sega Mega Drive, PlayStation, Xbox, anything Nintendo, even new Nintendo stuff. The prices hold and haven't dropped since since retro collecting became a popular thing. But one thing I think might have played into the demise of brick and mortar shops was the likes of adverts and Done Deal, and Americans would call it Craigslist. The internet, and I know, like, I'm not talking like Amazon. I mean people that buy and sell for a living. You know, it'd be like someone who would do a car boot sale or a garage sale, but now they have access to do it to buy and sell through everyone. So you could do it without the overheads of a shop and still you know, make a pretty good living buying and selling. And I suppose that would have came about during, and even the likes of, say, forums being a thing when the internet came. People had the ability to start talking to people around the country, and communities joined together and buying and selling within communities. I wonder, did that play a part into it as well?
I'd say it would play like some form of part, you know, like obviously if you look, you have easier access to get something from like the comfort of your own home, it's fair enough. But I mean, I'm thinking like we were losing stores, you know, when they were still popular in a sense. Like I think it really just does come down to, like, look, here's the question, right? And it's plain and simple. If you could not buy games digitally, would the stores still all be open, regardless of people secondhand buying and selling? The answer is 100% yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like,
without question,
that is like, you know, that is the cause of it, and also we're the cause of it. Like people, I never really understand the argument that's like, I can't believe a company did this. I can't believe they're taking away physical media. The only reason they do it is because our consumer choices. Like, the only reason anything happens is because we stop buying something, we start doing this, obviously because a service was offered, but if the service wasn't more convenient for us, we wouldn't use it, we'd still buy physical, right?
True.
Like, you know, you're like, and the biggest example I can give to you for anyone who kind of goes a bit hypocritical on that is like, well, are you buying the Blu-rays of the movie you're watching, or are you watching it on Netflix? Because there's no difference. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're not going out buying the games, that's our consumer choices. And if you want that, that's why they closed. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, if you're not happy about it, it's like, there's nothing you can do because we made it happen.
That's a harsh reality, but one that's, you have to, you can't, well, I couldn't argue against, because I do watch Netflix and I do watch Disney Plus and I have Amazon Prime. You know, I have all these things. I do like to buy from physical shops as well, as opposed to just buying online and supporting when I can. But also,
I hate buying online. Like, I can't. Like, I literally had to get Emma to order me 2 Dragon Ball books the other day because I keep going in the shops to get them, and I managed to get 2 issues ahead, and I couldn't get the 2 ones before, and I kept looking in the shop for months and months till eventually I just had to get next day delivery, and it was so easy. But like, I like, if I could have a genie and say, could we go back to having that human experience of going into stores and chatting with the clerks and you know, renting and having a Saturday night experience of going out with your family and going to the store, going out with your partner, your girlfriend and your friends, I would do that. But it's the equivalent of also saying, like, if I could, you know, get a genie to give me a 6-pack, I'd fucking do that too. But it's like, what happens is we get lazy. We like, the things that make us happy is the path of most resistance usually. Like the getting up out of the couch and going out and doing this and meeting someone and going to the gym and going for a run. They're all the things that make you happy. But it's also like you know, you just get fucking lazy, right? And it's the same thing with downloading a game, or it's the same thing with Netflix and having too much choice. You get lazy and you get too into it, you know? Yeah. But if I could go back, I would, and I would have those experiences, you know?
Of course, yeah. It's nostalgia, isn't it? It's why these we're having this conversation about brick and mortar is nostalgia. And you could go back because you'd want to go back and you'd have that feeling of, like you were saying, going out, doing your shopping, talking to the people who work in the shops. But you're totally right. It's convenience, I think you could say, as well as just being lazy. It's what is the easiest for you. And
yeah.
It's not just, and now that I think about it, it's not just the video game shops, it's all shop. Like, think about malls, shopping centres. They were like the hub of the modern society.
Now.
And then they're
creepy now.
Yeah, and then they just became fucking useless. Like, they just became these derelict buildings that were empty.
It's crazy. Like, there's always that one or two shops that are still open in a place that has 90% of them closed, and it's just the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah,
it's
and
like
it's sad.
It's it's sad. It's melancholy, and it's weird, and it's kind of creepy, but it's mostly just sad. It is, because there's like. And again, it's all like kind of the lack of the human connection. I think, though, is nostalgia like a yearning for like being a more time of feeling more human, though? Like, because like when you think about everything, it's all about some form of connection, or like going out there, or like, you know, I don't know, or even playing games that involved having your friends over rather than playing with them online. You know what I mean? Like, all those things create separation between people. And I'm trying to think, like, is nostalgia a yearning for being with people? Like, no matter what you look at it in a nutshell.
I suppose it is. And I wonder, for a lot of it is, right? A lot of people's nostalgia are based around their childhoods. When you were a kid, what were you doing? Most people were hanging out with their friends. They were playing with their friends. Then when you grow up and you get an adult, and you turn into an adult, you get a job. And you're out, you're working all day. You get home, you're tired. Sometimes you just want to go to bed.
There's so many people who just live alone.
Yeah.
So many people. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, you know, as you're older, in your 20s or your 30s or whatever. I remember reading a story recently saying someone was never so lonely as when they like moved out of the house, and they never realized what it was to have their family around them.
Yeah.
Do you know, like, as in the sense that when they went to college and they were just in a dorm room, they were like, God, I miss my sister just causing noise downstairs. Or like, you know, when you're a kid. And I think, look, obviously, you know, being in school can be lonely, and you can be bullied and isolated. There's loads of different things, and just because people's around doesn't mean, you know, you're not lonely. But I think there is definitely like that buzz of a house or something, you know. And obviously I'm not saying everyone had a good childhood, and I'm not trying to do that either, but, you know, there was always like something around you. Do you know what I mean? And that's
what you're talking about, nostalgia, and that the longing of human interaction and going back with people. And is that where it stems from? So I was saying, like, because when you're a kid, there's loads of people around. You're either playing with your kids, or if you're in a house that has a large family, there's always people in and out. But then when you get older, like you were saying, people live on their own.
And even when you're playing the games, you're always surrounded by like parents, or you know what I mean? Like, they're always present in the environment, and it's like it feels different, you know? And it's why I go back to the thing that I love, parallel play. Like, that's my dream, is like that I'm sitting down and playing games while someone else is reading a book next to you or something. Do you know what I mean? That it's like you're both in your own zones doing your own thing, but it's like, I think that's why like I like that too so much, just because it's very nostalgia and it feels safe. It feels very safe, like being a kid when you were safe, you know?
Yeah, it does actually. Now that you say it, like, I remember an awful lot of that parallel play. Say you sitting down with the Switch, and your Emma's reading a book or watching the telly or something, but you're just you're in each other's aura, and you know you're nice and cozy, and you're together, and you're just doing what is relaxing each other. I remember an awful lot of being a kid and just playing with toys while my older brother was playing video games, or we had a PC, say, under the stairs, or at one point it was in our room, so I'd be sitting in the room just playing with the PC. I could be sitting there playing the video game console, or just playing with toys, or read a magazine, and you weren't necessarily interacting, but you were just there together, and it was just a nice feeling.
To take it a step further, do you think nostalgia is actually less even about being around people, it's more about feeling safe?
Yeah, like definitely. Like
and is that why we surround ourselves again with the psychology of collections? Because it's like a wall of safety, of like feeling
safe.
It's
like your blanket, isn't that what you said before?
Yeah,
it's like
it's like your comfort blanket kind of, or like it's your like your susu. It's your dummy, you know.
It's interesting for me. Like, nostalgia for me can be two totally different things. Like what I was talking about, sitting there, say with my brother Aiden, watching him play video games, or he was on the PC and I was playing video games. But then I also have a lot of on my own time as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, I do remember just getting lost in video games, and people might have been coming in and out, but I was just so engrossed in games. it's I really I want to be able to explore it a bit with a bit more knowledge, because I don't feel like I can find the right words to describe my nostalgic feelings, because it's all there's so many different feelings, and I feel like it's why so much of my nostalgia so much of my focus on retro video games is inspired by nostalgia, because it's such a broad thing. It's not just the Super Mario 3 on the NES. It's so many aspects to nostalgia for me anyway.
Yeah, I think like a good example I think I can give, like what I mean kind of about safety as well, is not necessarily just about people being around, but like safety in your brain, in the sense that like you yearn for a time where you weren't thinking about other things. Like, you try and sit down for a game now, and it's like, you're thinking, well, I'm just trying to explain this further in my head of what it feels like to me. Yeah. You're yearning for that time where it's like being bored is something that doesn't really happen too much as an adult. Because the art of being bored we talked about before, do you know what I mean? And it's like,
you have to do it, man. I was actually, sorry to cut across, I was actually thinking this. I really want to do an episode on the art of being bored, and just go into it with a total open mind. I feel like it's the kind of thing that we shouldn't prep for. You should just go in and talk about being bored and what it's like.
Yeah, well, I mean, we didn't prep for this conversation, and it's turned into this, which I prefer over its initial conception. Do you know what I mean? Like, it leads from one thing into another kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
It feels more honest. It feels more real.
Yeah. But I think being, like, you're right, being bored isn't something we experience very often, but that's also to do with smartphones.
It is, but also I think as an adult, now look, I'm not saying anxiety hits everyone different, but as an adult, I think you're thinking about like all the things you have to do, or you can't even like even if you were doing nothing all day, like as a kid, you're just like lying on the floor staring at the ceiling in this like haze. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Where you're just like, oh, like it's such a, like I remember that feeling of being like, oh, you know, like, but like it's also like a lovely feeling, because like there's nothing, you're not feeling anything bad or anything. You're just purely just like, fuck.
To feel nothing.
Do you remember like literally being able to stare at a window for like 20 minutes? Just like literally just staring at a window for 20 minutes. Kind of like lost in your thoughts. Maybe there's a Game Boy down next to you and you're even bored of playing that Game Boy game you were playing. Yeah. And you're just kind of like fucking, there's that real inner peace of like no responsibilities. That is that safety nostalgia that I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
It's funny to think of, like, because I do remember that as a kid, and I'm thinking have I ever done that recently? And I only kind of stare into space when I'm having some sort of a crisis or meltdown, and my brain is just like trying to keep it together, and I'm just. Whereas
really
as a child,
weird?
it's just that your brain's just going. You know?
Do you know that when you do that as an adult, isn't there this really weird sense of calm about it? Do you ever have that thing where you're like stressed to fuck, you're having a breakdown, right? Yeah. And you kind of just go like, whatever, like if someone comes in now and shoots me, like, you know, it's like you go into this like mode of like almost like this sereneness of like, do you know when you feel like, oh well, I'm fucked anyway, and you just kind of stare, you know, you go into that like, as you said, that where you just go like this, and you're like, fuck it, whatever, I can't do anything about this now, and you kind of go into this really calm, really like like catatonic, like
you've accepted your fate,
override. Yeah, like you've kind of accepted your fate or whatever, but you're just like, and you just get to sit in it, like it's almost like you bask in it. It's almost, and you're just like, do you know, it's like, I'm just kind of shaking my head there, like imagining what it's like doing it. It's just like, you're just like, sure, it doesn't matter, like what else could go wrong, and it's like a weird calmness. Do you know, it's such a weird.
I feel like this whole episode has had such an energy to it, and it's been really funny and really. It's been, I haven't felt an energy like this with an episode in quite a while. And it's just because it's different, because there's so much flowing back, and it's opening so many doors in my head. That's why I love doing the podcast and chatting, and it opens doors and makes you think about things, man. It's really, really cool. But we posed a question, and we did have one of our dedicated listeners wrote in with some memories of.
To our fairness and fault, we posed the question several hours before we did the podcast, so for anyone who missed it, don't worry about it. It wasn't on you this time.
Well, Zanfan wrote in with a story about video game brick and mortar stores, which is what this episode is all about. Even though the conversation has spiraled, I feel like
it spiraled. I think in the right way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm gonna read out. This is on our Discord, by the way. If you want to join our Discord, the link is in the show notes, and links to all our social medias are there as well. But Zanfan wrote in and said, so for me, in the late 80s, early 90s, the main memory I have is going to the gates. I don't know if you had this procedure in Ireland.
This procedure in Ireland. Can I try and read it at the same time as you?
What?
Okay, Nisha, just pretend we fused for a second, okay?
What happened there? Did we just do the fusion ho or something?
Yeah. I was just thinking what our voices would sound like reading the same thing together.
Are you ready? We're going to start from I don't know if you had this procedure in Ireland, right? You ready?
Okay, we'll try and use commas as well. 3, 2, 1. I don't know if you had this procedure in Ireland. Is there a delay on Discord?
It's not working.
Wait. But here in the States come some of the major toy shows. Try one more time. But, okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay. But 3, 2, 1, we'll go from both, okay? 3, 2, 1. But here in the States, some of the major toy stores.
I'm on a different.
You're on a different planet. All right, continue on. Sorry, I was just having fun.
I don't know if you had this procedure in Ireland, but well, if we fused, what would our name be? Keisha?
It would be Keisha, I think is the easiest one.
Keisha?
Keisha sounds like... I don't know what Keisha sounds like, but
Keisha's sounds like an actual name. I'm very sure it's a name.
It does.
I don't know if you had back to Chris's story. Sorry, Chris. I don't know if you had this procedure in Ireland, but here in the States, some of the major toy stores like Toys R Us, Child World, and the like, had you browse these cardboard cards in the game. Fucking hell. I'm going to start again from the start of Chris's story. Chris said, so for me, in the late 80s, early 90s, the main memory I have is going to the gates. Don't know if you had this procedure in Ireland, but here in the States, some of the major toy stores like Toys R Us, Child World and the like, had you browse these cardboard cards in the video game aisle. I would later learn that they were called VidPro cards. These cards were placed flush against the wall of the aisle and were laminated versions of the original video game boxes, front and back. What this did was let you browse the game boxes as you normally would, but you get the actual game, which at the time were premium purchases. You would take a ticket from under the VidPro card and then pay for it at the register. That's pretty cool. You then got the ticket and your receipt and went to the gates. It was the room that was surrounded by these jail-like bars with a teller window like you were at a bank in a shady part of town.
Sounds like a pawn shop or something for gold.
That's what it's coming to my mind. You handed the clerk your ticket and the receipt and they would get your game. While they were looking for your purchase, you would look through the gates and literally see thousands of fresh, sealed, brand new video games for every system around at any given time. I wish I could work at the other side of the gates just to be surrounded by the goodness. Then after the clerk found your game, they would hand it to you through the gates and then you would smile because you had new game. One thing that's cool is there's a poster that an independent artist made that captures what the feeling was like browsing through the cards in the store. They sell them as posters in 2 ways, with an image of a kid browsing, or you could just get just the cards and tickets alone and simulate and recreate the experience like you used to. I attached a copy of the poster as an example. Sadly, there are multiple people that sell these, so don't know who the original creator was, but if I find out which one made it first, I'll let you know. So below, Zanfan has posted a picture, and it's that World of Nintendo that I'd mentioned to you before, Keith, and it's just a kid standing at a wall of video game pictures, and it's really cool. I don't remember. I remember there being the actual boxes on the shelves. I don't remember there being cards.
We had we definitely the boxes we had on shelves were for a lot of cases were definitely display boxes though.
Yeah,
you know what dummies.
I mean? Yeah.
Like, I don't think they were ever like the sealed deal. Well, sometimes I think they might have been actually.
Do you remember in like I remember in the likes of HMV, they had the big, like almost everyone was in this big huge case, almost like the way people get games graded nowadays. You could buy games.
Yes.
Monstrous thing,
I know what you're talking about. Like, they still use them in some places. Like, the alarm system case thing, Mababi. Yeah.
That's really cool.
That's cool. It reminds me of like the Japanese system that Zanfan is talking about. I feel like they have like a lot of that kind of stuff where it's like for cards especially. I think they still do. In a lot of shops for cards, you just like take the token, so because boosters will be stolen so easily. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
so it's like you kind of go up with them. But that's really, really cool. I feel like there's so much to talk about with nostalgia and the fact that like shops and the reason they're gone and the reason they're here and the reason we like are nostalgic. So I don't know. There's a whole.
I wonder, might it be worth asking someone who, because I know a few people who have had video game stores in Ireland. It would be interesting to have somebody on and have a conversation with them.
Yeah, 100%. I'll definitely be down for that.
Can I do a little plug for the speaking of shops and buying video games? Can I do a plug for the Irish Game Market that I'm going to?
Of course.
When this releases, this is going to release on the Wednesday. It's going to be on the Saturday and the Sunday. So the Irish Gamer Market is on the 13th and 14th of July. And where is it on? Oh, they've just posted a picture of me. I'm doing a panel. I'm doing a panel at 12:30 on the Saturday. A creator panel. It's going to be on in the City North Hotel.
Is this how you're finding out? Yeah.
Well, I'm only after seeing the picture now. They asked me beforehand, and I said yes. But I'm only after seeing the post there. So the Irish Gamer Market is on the 13th and the 14th of July in the City North Hotel in Gormanstown, County Meath, and I have been to the previous two of them, and they are amazing. There's loads of retro video game vendors. There's the likes of the Retro Video Game Store in Wexford. They bring loads of their gear up there. It's a really good time. It's the biggest collection of retro video games for sale in one place that I've ever witnessed in Ireland anyway. And I'm really looking forward to it. And our friend Harry, that we did our video game magazine, is going to be joining me there. So I'm really looking forward to it. So just a little plug for the Irish Gaming Market, because I'm very excited to go there, and it kind of ties into the video game shops and buying video games idea. So yeah, that was a fun episode, man. Really enjoyed it. It'll be interesting to hear other people's stories on video game shops and brick and mortar, and especially if there was anybody around Ireland that has memories of them, because we might have one that we were in that, imagine someone said a sort that
do you know what would be even cooler if you had pictures? That would be great. If you have any old maybe Polaroids or digital,
of like
send them on.
Extravision, Blockbuster, anything,
and even
like
more
that.
So if you're listening, well, I was going to say if you're listening to it, send it to us so we can use it as the episode art, but that's kind of backwards.
If you do, get in touch on Discord, post the pictures if you're okay to do so, because it'd be very, very cool. But thanks everybody for listening. We're going to continue on. We're going to wind down after this. We're going to take our clothes off, wind down, pour a glass of a mega pint of wine, and continue on. We're going to suck some dick on Patreon. Let's go! Two boys sucking dick. Let's fucking get down to it. Chat to you later, Nisha. No, I'm finishing on that. Two guys, Nisha Keats, sucking dick on patreon.com/patreon.com. Press any dick to suck. Let's go. Bye.